Hey, welcome back, family, to a new episode of Transformed and Renewed. Listen, if this is your first time watching us, make sure that you hit that like and subscribe button. That way you can stay up to date with the latest content. If you are returning, welcome back. We have a good episode today. And so hopefully that it can be informative to you and you can take away some good notes and you can have a sense of relief about this topic, which I would say for some people, you probably could relate to it very well. But again, if this is your first time, make sure that you hit that like and subscribe button. And I'll be sure to remind you in case you say, you know what, I'll do that later. I'll remind you. So let's get into it. So we're going to be talking about, does eating dairy cause digestive issues? And at least from what I can take a survey of, at least from different people that I've noticed, and even just hearing a lot of conversation in passing of people who say, you know what, I used to eat dairy product, but lately just hasn't been feeling normal, or if I'm hearing a person talk about it, they may say, I'm not feeling normal when I typically consume dairy. And I want to define what is dairy because it's easy to throw around terms and you're not really understanding what does it really mean. You could assume it, but at least based off of when I really went to, this is based on the American Heritage Dictionary. Dairy is processing, selling milk, and milk products, as well as a place where milk and cream are stored and processed. So, typically involving milk and involving cream. And usually, when we think of dairy, we think about cows because cows are typically known to be a constituent, a major constituent when it comes to milk-based products, creams, butters, and other products related to milk. And one thing about milk is that it contains what we are going to talk about that can lead to some digestive issues is a sugar called lactose. Okay. So again, when we think about dairy, milk-based products, animals that typically have milk are going to be cows, goat, think maybe lamb, sheep. Haven't really consumed any of those types of milks, but I know that those are some of the types of animals that do produce milk. Now, person may say, well, what about eggs? Well, I didn't see eggs anywhere listed when it comes to dairy. So that is probably a surprise to some people is that eggs may not typically be considered as dairy. Depends on who you ask, but at least that's what I saw when I looked it up. Now, as we think about it, a lot of people consume cheese, and it's not too surprising because cheese is advertised everywhere. Okay. You think about a lot of brands of cheeses, and when you think about it, you wonder, like, man, the cheese industry is very large because even store brands have their own labels of cheeses. And the thing about cheese is that you have so many, you have different sugars in the cheeses, the way the cheese is processed, even milk, creams. The fat content is one constituent that makes it very palatable. But let's get into like why this is starting to cause some issues. So earlier I talked a little bit about lactose. Now lactose is a sugar that typically occurs or naturally occurs in milk-based products or just even creams, but it typically would occur in milk products. And when it comes to lactose, since it is a sugar, usually in order for a sugar to be digested in the body, it usually has to have an enzyme. And so, do I like to think of it because you may say, well, how do I really understand this? So, when it comes to lactose, you have an enzyme that is called lactase. Now, many adults typically will have lactase, and I'll get into the issue with that in a second. But you have lactase, and then you also have amylose, which is a starch polysaccharide which needs amylase, which is the enzyme that is used to break down amylose in order for it to be digested in the body. So whenever you have, a sugar, it usually would be accompanied by an enzyme. So sugar would typically have the OSE ending, and then the enzyme would have the ASE ending. So OS, ACE. OS needs the ACE to break it down, typically. Now, back to lactase. The thing about lactase is that, based on research, is that most people typically have lactase, but as you begin to age, so getting older year over year, your body starts to become deficient when it comes to intestinal lactase. This means that if you are consuming same, which I doubt it, or more lactose that is found in milk, cheeses, creams, etc. But your body is becoming deficient, meaning that it's lacking the proper enzyme lactase in order to break down lactose. You're going to run into some issues. And this is what, at least looking at some research, I found is that this is the enzyme, again, that is required to digest lactose. Now, again, because a lot of individuals who may start to become deficient in lactase, and it's one of those, unless you see a gastrointestinal um, doctor, then you won't really understand how or what the activity when it comes to the lactase in your body is. But even then, sometimes you can probably detect some symptoms, which could be some telltale signs of there is an issue. So you may start to experience some issues such as bloating, stomach pain, digestion issues, gas, nausea, etc., where you're always feeling pain in your small intestine, even your large intestine, but you feel pain in this. It's usually unsettling. And sometimes you may notice it more when you are consuming dairy products and you feel like, you know what, I can take an antacid and that usually helps me, or I can just drink something or take something that would temporarily relieve it. However, this can be a major health issue because while those methods can provide a temporary comfort, it's still not addressing the issue if you're consuming more and more dairy product that contains lactose and your body is not able to process that, handle it well. That still is going to put a load on your body, even if you do have some temporary treatment that can ease the pain or the comfort. The underlying problem is still there, meaning that your body is like, you know what? We are too stressed. We're getting sick and tired of you trying to load us up, and we're telling you we don't want it. So, I mean, it's kind of like if you have a company and you have workers who are just fed up with just the way things are. And you've been saying, you know what? We're going to keep working the same way that we are, and that's it, until one day you have a coworker that says, "You know what? I we are done. We walking out, okay, and we want a paycheck." Now, obviously, that is, my example of what can happen if you're continuing to load your body with lactose, yet you're lacking lactase. So you're loading your body with lactose, but your body is not sufficient when it comes to lactase, which is needed to break down lactose. So this is pretty much a main issue for a lot of people. And again, because your body is lacking this critical enzyme, you start to have a lot of health issues. And there are some other issues related to consuming dairy, but this is, by far one of the more common ones is, again, lacking lactase. Okay. And so when we think about it, because again, most people may not realize that they are lacking lactase as an enzyme. This can provide some risk factors when we think about it, such as age. You may start to notice that kids can start to have some issues with being lactose intolerant. So, well, I think growing up, we've heard this term, but this is, an actual a an actual occurrence where when you do lack the proper enzyme to break down lactose, your body becomes intolerant because your your body usually is going to set up a defense mechanism if it doesn't recognize something well, or if something is looked at as a foreign object. your body is your body is going to respond the best way it can. How that translates to what you feel may not be the best, because again, you may start to feel nausea, you may start to feel like you're about to vomit, you may feel intense pain in your abdominal area, so your small intestine, large intestine, um, especially if women are pregnant and they are lactose intolerant and having digestive issues. This can cause some health issues to the infant, because some infants can be born prematurely, having reduced levels of lactase. So instead of the infant being born with, let's say, just giving a rough number, because I don't really know what the actual unit would be, but let's just say an infant would be at about 80% of lactase. Having this deficiency, what could cause that infant to only have about 40% or even 35% of lactase, or even lower, and even causing some issues with the birth. So this is something to keep in mind, is that if you are experiencing just lactose related issues with consuming dairy, pregnant, or you could be pregnant, this is something that you should consider because it can affect the birth. It can affect the health of the baby, the cells that are produced, how much lactase the baby can contain. So, if you are consuming dairy and and you're like, you know what, my child is going to eat dairy, that is important to know, because if your child consumes dairy, yet they had a deficiency already with having reduced levels of lactase, then that could already be another trip to the hospital. But again, that is something to know, especially if you are already experiencing issues with that. You can have many diseases when it comes to the small intestine. One thing about the small intestine is that it is responsible for absorbing a lot of nutrients, and so for the small intestine to be compromised or to be in danger is not good, because you're going to be at risk of not getting the proper absorption of a lot of nutrients, especially when you start to have problems such as being lactose intolerant, even bacterial growth that can occur from the the compounds that's in milk products, creams, cheeses, because as that those compounds sit, they can begin to exhibit some growth. Okay, and they can also affect the lining of the small intestine, and also this can lead to celiac disease, which is typically known to have a um, celiac disease, which is known when the body or the lining of the small intestine is inflamed because it's not able to absorb the nutrients from gluten. Okay. And so when it comes down to it, lactose intolerant is nothing to play with or even to invite, especially if you can prevent it. So, some of the ways that you can avoid this, and to be honest, there are kind of more areas when it comes to dairy, such as different, I want to say, amino acids and proteins that can also affect your body. But at least with this lactose, this is one that is common, that is trending because of how widely accessible it is, but also how much harm it can cause on different individuals, especially when they are lacking lactase. But especially if you would say, you know what, I feel like this relates to me well because I have been dealing with some digestive issues. I think it could be related to, lacking lactase in my body. And I just want to figure out how I can avoid it. Well, obviously, one of the primary ways that you can avoid it is by reducing or even eliminating a lot of foods containing lactose from your diet. And again, this would include anything related to milk, cream, cheeses, or any dairy related products that contain lactose. Typically, you can get a lot of, I know that a lot of products now for some time have had lactose free products. Sometimes you can even get plant based um, options. But again, I would always stress that you always want to get quality, wholesome foods. Okay. Just because something may not have a particular compound in it does not mean that it's necessarily the best for you. Now, could it be a better alternative compared to something that is containing that particular component that would cause some health issues? Oh, of course, it's a good alternative. But if we're thinking long term, it's always important to think about, is this really going to support my health goals? Is it going to support my health? Are there any health issues I should be aware of? Should I modify anything? And so when it comes down to it, I know that a lot of milk products, cheeses can have a rich flavor to it, a profile that a lot of people can adopt to. And it can be in some ways addicting because you like the texture, you like the taste, and it's hard for you to find a lot of alternative substitutes that are going to provide you with the pleasure, the texture, as well as the, I guess, comfort, which would go back to pleasure. But again, there are some options. Does it take a while? Obviously, it does, depending on what you're used to consuming, as well as the nutritional component about it. So, that is one thing to keep in mind. Comes to milks, you can choose plant based milks. Again, it's important to choose high quality milks that are going to be good for you. As well as when it comes to creams, you have different substitutes that can come in place of creams, such as avocado, different recipes for that. Coconut, obviously, when it comes to moderation, using that. You have olive oil. You have so many different types that can be used as substitutes. Obviously, there may be some slight texture as well as flavor differences. But again, this is where, if you are dealing with these issues, this is going to be critical for you to say, you know what, let me start to explore some options, especially if for some reason I really do like consuming these products, but I know that my stomach is not going to feel the same way that my mind is feeling. So, again, I hope that this helps you when it comes to providing some alternatives to consuming lactose products, whether it's milk, creams, cheeses, etc. There are many different alternatives. And again, it is a matter of how open you are to exploring and being able to try some foods, because you could try something that could definitely be better than what you thought you were consuming. So that is also the intriguing part about, being open to different alternative foods. So if you enjoyed this, make sure that you hit that like and subscribe button. And again, when it comes to a topic like this, is dairy, is consuming dairy, does it cause any digestive issues? There are some subtopics areas that we didn't get into, but again, this is at least one of the more common topics, lactose, because obviously it's a, I could pretty much go another hour talking about some other areas, but hopefully this kind of gives you a better understanding if you've related well to this one, or even if you say, you know what, I have noticed some issues consuming dairy, and I think what you're saying is right on point. So if it is, make sure you give us a like, subscribe. We strive to give you the best information, and hopefully we continue to do that. And we also want you to let us know, how have you liked the content that we have been sharing? Is it relevant to you? Would you like to learn something more, additional? Would you like me to get more scientifically, which I can? um, we would like to hear from you, or at least I would like to hear from you, so that way I can understand, what can I help you with? Okay. Because we're going to continue to give you the information, and hopefully you can use it, apply it the best way you see fit, share it, which is always beautiful, because someone else can benefit from what you share that I may not be able to reach them, but you can pass it along to them and they get the help that they need. So, again, if you enjoyed this content, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button on your screen, as well as navigate to our website at robody.org. You want to click on that button before you do any scrolling. That way you can get started with your one-to-one health coaching with me. And this way we can start working on your health goals. So instead of you setting a January resolution or a mid-year resolution, a December resolution, you can pretty much establish a lifestyle. Okay. So you can throw away the resolutions in the trash and you can start to adapt a lifestyle, one that works for you. So if that appeals to you, make sure you navigate to our website at roadbody.org. Click on that link, follow the prompts, get signed up. And I look forward to working with you soon. And until next time, I will talk with you later.